Good evening, everyone. We'll start the session now. And first of all, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining this session. Uh, we will talk about today's session on market outlook, on where do we see Nifty and stock markets moving, which are the stocks, sectors that we would want. My voice is well audible, right? At the back? Thank you. Yeah, a little bit of, uh, yeah. So we'll fix the mic in the meantime. So we will, markets, thankfully over the last 2-3 weeks, there has been a respite, with where we were at the bottom of around 21,800 levels. So I will, sir. Surely, I am. I am starting that, sir. So I'm just so introducing the session, then introducing everybody. So what I'm going to do to talk today is what I'm talking about. So one is markets, right? Stock sectors, and to do that, we've got Pankaj Pandey, who heads the research on ICICI Direct and ICICI Securities. We've also got Jay Thakkar, who's a popular face on Z Business. Jay covers the quantitative research for ICICI Securities, and my name is Saurabh Sultania, and I take care of ICICI Direct products and platforms. So that's what we do. And I'm going to talk about, so there'll be 3 parts to the session. First, a little bit on market outlook, stock sectors. We'll take some questions that you may have in your mind also. A little bit on the quantitative way that we are approaching markets over the next 2-3 months, because that's also a view. And the third part of the session will be on 2 aspects. One, we've done a study of 45 lakh retail investors who've invested in money in markets, and what they did right and what they did wrong, right? I mean, where did, how, and how, which, and we looked at profitable investors. And we will spend 30 minutes on ICICI Direct platform, because many of you spend a lot of time, on the platform. So things that could help you invest better and also trade better. I mean, because, as we understand, there are a lot of people who actually also trade, options on our platform. So we will do that. So we will kind of keep that, this 2 hours a little more, packed for you. We've got refreshments also. We've got the washroom is on the, on the back side. So anything that you need, we'll be, happy to take. I'll start with market outlook, and we've also got Raj heads, West and North and East zone for the company. So the entire leadership team at ICICI Securities and ICICI Bank is here. So thank you, and again I welcome all of you. Thank you for your time on this Saturday evening. We will try to make it as engaging as possible. So with Pankaj, I will start. First of all, with market outlook, where do we see markets headed? And just to also tell you, not just stocks, we'll also talk about gold. Because that's also an asset class. A lot of people are invested, or rather getting interested. Typically Indians, we have held physical gold, but never financial, looked at gold as an investment, or a financial asset that we've held. So just a request, if you could please keep the mobile phone on silent, it helps everyone. Pankaj, over to you to the session. Thank you.
Hi, good evening all. Am I audible enough? So I'll directly come to the point. Now, there are a few basic questions.
So your voice, yeah, Pankaj.
Is it fine?
Yeah.
So basic questions and hopefully simple answers. So when we look at what has happened in the last 1 year or so, when you look at FY25, what we have seen for our markets is that from a high of about 26,300 kind of a levels, market lost most of the gains and ended the year with a gain of about 4 to 5 odd percent. And that was because of number of factors. One was we had 8 state elections last year, and on top of it, we had Lok Sabha elections also. So that had a fair share of impact in terms of demand for certain sectors getting impacted, or the overall ordering and tendering getting impacted in the interim. And also to the fact that initially, when you look at from the month of October, the market, since they had rallied, so Indian markets were considered to be expensive, and people found that Chinese markets are cheap. So one round or first round of selling happened. So first round of selling happened largely from the FI side. And then we all know that when Trump got elected from January onwards till now, what we are sort of largely listening to. Whether God has some different plan. Yes. Yes. But interestingly, whatever said and done, FY25, most of the asset classes delivered positive set of numbers, with gold doing absolutely fine at about 34% kind of gains, large caps about 5%, and then you had mid cap and small cap doing about 6% and 2% respectively. And real estate about 15 to 20 odd percent, though when you sort of segregate real estate into various micro markets, what I understand is that markets like, say, Noida has done quite well in the last few years. Prices in general have sort of doubled. Probably in certain micro segments, it has actually gone up even more. One more interesting thing was that last year we had seen one of the highest fundraising. So fundraising to the tune of more than 3 lakh crore happened through a mix of IPOs, FPOs, QIPs, which is 2.5 times than what we normally see in a year. And FI selling, like I said, the first round by largely because China was looking attractive, and then after that Trump had a sort of fair share of impact. Now, when we look at markets going forward, there are some interesting trends which we sort of look at and which makes us bullish in the market. So one of the big trends in the market is that 2003 to 2007, if you have been there in the market for a bit longer period of time, that was the point in time when two strong cycles were playing out. So one was the real estate as a cycle did very well during that period of time. And the other factor was the capital expenditure. And we see similarities between then and now, that time and now also. So this is one of the big trends which we expect that is going to sustain, largely because while we are looking at 6.5% kind of a GDP growth rate, and with government capex at about 3% as a percentage to GDP, but overall sense is that India needs to grow slightly higher than this 6% or 6.5% to probably 7.5 or closer to 8 odd percent to create enough jobs for the people, and largely because we have a fairly young population, and for that capex is more of a necessity rather than a choice. And so this is one of the big trends which we feel, and that is going to sort of define how things are going to sort of shape up in the next 5 years or 10 years. One more interesting thing is, which I'll come to, is that we all notice that SIP inflows have been pretty robust last 2-3 months, despite whatever market correction we have seen. The domestic flows, SIP has been about 26,000 odd crores on a monthly basis. It's a significant amount. And we see similarities between what has happened or what is happening in our country vis-a-vis in a big market like US also. So I'll come to that. And the other thing is that, like I said, you had multiple state elections last year. A lot of things got impacted. A sector like cement, 1/3 of the demand is coming from infra side, so that got impacted, and which is why overall things were not good. But when we head into FY26, what we expect is a pretty normal year in terms of earnings, because you have only two elections. One is Delhi, which is already done, and then you have one more election which is in Bihar, which is towards the end of this year. So we would expect more of a normal year in terms of earnings of 13-14%, and parallelly markets are also expected to deliver something similar kind of returns. So if I look at it at this point in time from a 1 year perspective, the markets have seen a bit of a bounce, and which is why we are up about closer to 9% on a 1 year basis. We are fairly doing quite good compared to a lot of other competing geographies. Now, one obvious question is, see, in the long term, markets are always driven by earnings, and earnings are already at a high. And can the earnings sustain these levels? Like I said, if I look at the best of the times in the market, which is say 2003 to 2007 or 8, corporate profits as a percentage to GDP was somewhere about 6.4%. And at this point in time, we are at about 5.1%. And if I sort of break it into between large cap, mid cap, and small cap, the earnings are quite spread out, and earnings are nowhere near to the peak. And mind you, these earnings are at a 13-year high, but not at the kind of a peak when we had seen the previous cycle of 2003 to 2007. Which means that there is a lot more for room for earnings to sort of go up. And even if I look at it from a 1 year forward perspective in terms of incorporating the consensus estimates for next 1 year, we are not going to hit the peak of 6.4. At best, we are looking at about 5.7% of the profits as a percentage to GDP. Now, when you look at the earnings, last year FY25 earning growth was 4%. Market also delivered incidentally about 5 odd percent. So, which is what typically happens, that markets are going to sort of do what earnings are are going to behave in line with the overall earnings growth. But as we head into FY26 and FY27, there are a lot of changes which we see on the ground. So if you sort of notice, the biggest bar is for a sector like IT. Now, IT is a very important sector from a big index like Nifty. Now, 42% of your earnings or 43% of your earnings of Nifty is driven by banking and financial services. And banking and financial services, if you sort of notice, what has happened is that last few months, the sector was struggling largely because the domestic liquidity was tight. Banks were witnessing margin pressure, and a lot of factors were at play. But off late, if you look at with the new governor, a lot of things have changed. The liquidity has turned into positive. There are a number of measures the new governor has taken. In fact, when he sort of assumed charge, he clearly mentioned that he is not going to do the micromanagement, so which is why you see a lot of measures coming from the governor, and that has sort of lifted the sentiments for a big sector like banking. Now, banking is a domestic driven sector, not really driven by what happens globally. And good part is that even if you sort of notice off late, last week only, the bank said, the RBI said that the LCR norms, they are sort of relaxing. To put it in simple English, for example, if banks are generating various kinds of deposits, so saving bank deposit or a wholesale deposit, earlier the norm was that if you are getting 100 rupees, you need to set aside 5 rupees or you need to put it into 5% into G-Secs. And that was supposed to go up to about 10%, and which is what RBI said that not 10%, but it needs to increase only to 7.5%. So there was a relaxation of 2.5%. Similarly, if they are raising wholesale deposit, that entire 100 rupees has to go into G-Sec. But now that money of that money, 60% is going to sort of go into for lending purpose. So a lot of relaxation which has sort of happened, and IT is one sector which banking is one sector which is looking good. Now, IT is another sector which is sort of struggling. So, when you look at the recent results from most of the IT companies, what they are clearly saying is FY26, there is a lot of uncertainty. Now, if I have to sort of look at prior to this, the overall setup was that IT sector grows at 7-8 odd % dollar revenue growth. You have a rupee depreciation of 3-4 odd %. So typically the revenue growth in rupee terms is 11 odd %. That growth had sort of come down to about 4 odd %, which is what most of your tier 1 companies delivered last year. Now, recent commentary suggests that this 4% is going to be a difficult one for IT in FY26, largely because of the US-led uncertainty. And FY27 is where they expect things to sort of improve. Besides this, there are other sectors which were sort of struggling. So, for example, cement as a sector, because of lower demand or demand getting impacted because of elections, the prices were ruling at a 1-year low. From January onwards, we have seen cement prices inching up. Steel prices are at a 4-year low, largely because of the dumping which was going from China. I think the steel imports are at a decadal high of about 10 million odd tons. But recently, if you sort of notice, the government has put 12% kind of a safeguard duty on metals, especially steel. So outlook for a lot of sectors have started to sort of improve, and that gives us confidence that next 2 years, you are going to see a normal growth of about 13-14 odd % in the earnings, if not more. So basic question is what drives our long-term constructive view on the markets. So besides earnings, besides some of the sectors or big sectors, because see, banking is typically 34% by weightage in Nifty. And then you have other sectors, say for example, like I said, metals or cement, those are sort of looking good. But one more interesting thing what we clearly notice is that, you guys have been part and parcel of it, is that we are seeing increasing participation of domestic investors. So had it been not the participation from domestic investors, market would have seen significant amount of correction, which is what we have seen in previous cycles also. But now if you sort of notice, overall Indians hold about 32% of the overall equity market in terms of value, directly or indirectly. And if I see a similar trend which has happened in the US, so US also had seen a similar kind of a wave. So when you look at, they had witnessed a 20-year cycle wherein the household participation went up from say 9-10 odd % to nearly 38 odd %. And that led to a sustained rally in the market. So markets had gone up by 13x in the next 20 years. Now, I'm not saying that our markets are also going to head into similar direction or same intensity is what we are going to witness. But all I'm trying to highlight is that this means that we are going to experience lesser volatility. And if we walk the talk on the economic growth front, largely we are also going to witness a sustained sort of a kind of a bull run in the market. Subject to again various sectors and various stocks sort of doing well, but this is another big mega trend which we feel is expected to sort of help the markets do very well. Now, if markets are so good, then which sectors to sort of look at? Now again, from a next 5 to 10 year perspective, like I said, capital expenditure is more of a necessity than a choice. So we are looking at a spending of about 3% as a percentage to GDP, and obviously that will have beneficial impact on segments like capital goods, infrastructure, cement. We all notice that there are two sectors which are witnessing changes in the or the way the businesses operate or the energy transition beneficiaries. One of them is clearly the auto. Now the expectation is that the penetration of electric vehicles is expected to sort of go up. We have already seen EV penetration in a big market like China going up to 50 odd %. we are still in single digits as of now. And power is another sector which is witnessing that change, because gone are the days when we used to derive power only from the thermal side or bit on the nuclear or hydro side. Now a lot of other new avenue sources are there, especially the likes of solar and wind, which is going to sort of drive. Banking has changed for sure, and I am not referring to the recent RBI measures being taken. I think what we have clearly seen is that post insolvency and bankruptcy code, the borrower behavior has definitely changed, which is why banks are enjoying one of the best asset qualities which we have never seen for a long period of time. So while this is holding, or this is the kind of a view what we are carrying, consumption is seeing a change. So while the government has announced a number of tax benefit measures, but our sense is that the past sectors or segments which did well probably may not do so well going forward, and because you have new avenues for consumption which have come up. And auto is one of them. If you sort of notice, if somebody has bought a car, the Indian markets are clearly seeing the emergence of SUVs. So SUVs are closer to 60 odd % of the overall pie. Then hotels is something which is turning expensive if you have to sort of undertake a leisure holiday or a business trip. This is another sector which is benefiting from this. And real estate, while the number of volumes sold in FY25 had gone down by 3 to 4 odd %, but the properties which are 4 crore and above witness a growth of 37 odd % in value terms. And then hospital is another thing which is seeing a good amount of upturn, and I'll come to some of them. Banking and financial services. Financial services and insurance. That is the short form used for BFSI. Now, when we talk of capex, so broadly, if you sort of notice, or what I am trying to highlight is that overall capex in the economy is about 30 lakh crores. 10 lakh crore by the central government, closer to 8.3 lakh crore by the state government, and then you have private sector doing something similar. Now, if you sort of notice the previous cycle when we had seen one of the best returns and overall setup was good, the private sector capex was 4x or 5x of what the government did. So if you look at FY10, in fact FY09, the government or central government capex was 1 lakh crore, which is now 10 lakh crore, and the private sector capex was 5x of that number. And we would want to believe that the overall balance sheet of most of the companies is in pretty fine shape. There's no stress on the balance sheet, and which is why their ability to do capex is fairly there. Now we understand that given the current situation, a lot of corporates, especially private ones, may not be willing to sort of do capex. But once this sort of situation stabilizes, our sense is that the ability of private sector to do capex is fairly high. And hopefully, if the the view what we are carrying also is that in this entire tariff war, India is expected to be a beneficiary somewhere down the line, and probably that might also lead to an improvement in the overall capex cycle. Now, power is becoming a core sector. So earlier, the demand for power was coming from power consumption only. But now the expectation is that with more EVs and more data consumption, which we all do, we consume a lot of social media, and also with the advent of AI, because a simple Google query might require less amount of power, but AI query requires 8 to 10 times more power. So power is becoming a core sector, and power itself is witnessing a change in terms of how we generate power. So earlier thermal used to be the core, but now what we see is that power consumption itself is going to grow at 7 odd %. And within that, the overall sense is that the renewable energy is going to do a lot more better. So there the growth rate is going to be about 21 odd percent, and thermal is going to be more of a supportive role is what is expected from them. And this entire transition itself is going to require about 30 lakh crore in the next 5-6 years. Now, when you're sort of doing so much on the generation side, the expenditure on the transition side or transmission side is also expected to be there, because gone are the days when you historically used to produce power at a single resource. That is how the thermal power plant used to sort of generate. So power used to be generated at a single source and was consumed at multiple locations. But now with solar coming in, you have multiple places of generation and multiple places of consumption of power. So which is why the transmission capacity also needs to sort of improve. And overall sense is that transmission side things are also sort of looking up, and which is why overall the capex is expected to be about 9.5 lakh crores, which is what the government has come up with in the new electricity plan. And it's not that India is experiencing this surge in power demand. In fact, the transformer capacity is in fairly shortage, not only in India but even a big market like US. And which is why some of the companies in their recent interactions have said that there are hardly any companies which they can acquire for transformers, and which is why this is one sector or segment of the market which is experiencing quite a good run. Now, like I said, within power, renewable energy is something which is sort of taking up shape very well. So earlier, say between 17 to 21, we used to add about 6 to 7 gigawatt of solar power, which is improved to about 13 to 14. And this last year, we added closer to about 24 gigawatt of solar energy. And solar is going to take center stage, is going to be 61% of the overall renewable energy capacity. And this has happened in the last few years, because earlier the expectation was that wind is going to do sort of take a center stage, but with solar panels cost coming down, the solar is expected to do well. And luckily for us, India is one of the few countries where the solar radiation is quite good. So which is why solar is here to stay and is going to be the anchor driver for power. Now, defense is another sector. So this is one sector which has sort of got created in the last few years, and I'll sort of highlight that why. So if I look at it from a year, say 2013 to 2022, now in this 10-year period, the acceptance of necessity was given to projects worth 8.5 lakh crores, right? But in the last 3 years, we have given acceptance of necessity of 9.5 lakh crores worth of projects. Now, typically the cycle is that once you give acceptance of necessity, it takes about 2 to 3 years for that to sort of get converted to orders. And which is why if you look at recently, the defense minister clearly said that this is a very long timeline. Ideally, the acceptance of necessity to ordering needs to be curtailed. So this year is expected to be a year of transition. And which is why what the government is clearly saying is that if if defense forces are building acceptance of necessity, parallelly they need to work on the RFQs also, so that this entire process gets curtailed or gets shortened. And when I look at it from that perspective, overall sense is that the defense production itself is going to grow at high teens, and the proportion of domestic content is obviously expected to increase, which is what the government has been wanting. You pick any PSU companies, while it's not a complete list, the order backlog is nearly 6 times of their FY25 sales. And within that, some interesting things is that the share of electronics. So for example, gone are the days when defense equipment used to be only a mechanical equipment. A lot of electronic components are part and parcel of it. The share of electronics are definitely going up, and which is why overall things are sort of changing. And since we have such a high demand, and which is why if you sort of notice, government is looking to invite even private sector to sort of pitch into it. Because to give you just an example, while we are working on a fifth generation aircraft like MCA, the first quarter is expected to come in FY35, which is a fairly 10-year kind of a time frame, and which is why you need a private sector participation. And mind you, both our neighbors, especially China and Pakistan, are already deploying a fifth generation aircraft. Now, railway and roads are crucial component because, and we have seen fair amount of allocation. So I spoke about 10 lakh crore kind of a capex. 50% has been going to road and railways, and road and railways are extremely important, because if I have to take our GDP higher from 6.5 to 7.5 to 8 odd percent, you need a good manufacturing base, and for that the logistic cost needs to be quite lower, which means that the amount of infrastructure spending to be done on railways needs to be higher, and which is why this is one of the biggest component what you're seeing. See, historically, railway has been sort of mismanaged. Ideally, most of your freight movement needs to happen from railways. But that got reversed because we went into a populist mode wherein the passenger rates were never raised, and that burden had to be sort of borne by the freight segment. Freight become unviable, and which is why we have a fairly large CV as a segment. Now that needs to be corrected, and which is what the government is looking to do with both Eastern plus Western DFC. And railway is expected to carry going forward about 45% of the freight. Currently, it's carrying about 26%. Now on roads, while one round of highway creation was done, but if you sort of notice, a lot of roads are still sort of choked. So wherever possible, 2 lanes are going to be made into 3 lanes, and in addition to that, we are also working on about 25,000 kilometers of highway expressways, and which again would require significant amount of capex. So this is another segment which is going to require good amount of capex of 20 lakh crores. Now, cement is another sector which is core because nothing can happen. So, real estate cannot happen without a sector like cement. In cement, overall sense is that except for last year, going forward, a normal growth rate of 7 to 8 odd percent is expected to happen. The industry is also fairly consolidated. Top 5 players contribute 60% of the volumes, and our sense is that you will see a decent combination of price and volume growth happening. So this is another sector which is a domestic driven sector, unlike metals where a lot depends on what China sort of does. So banking is another sector which I spoke of largely. If nominal GDP growth rate is going to be 11-12 odd percent, your credit growth also needs to happen slightly over above that. But one pattern change, what we would expect is that last 10-15 years, the retail loan growth has been more and corporate growth has been less. But our sense is that going forward, you'll see more of a corporate loan growth and less of a retail loan growth. So which is why the proportion of corporate loan is expected to go up. We are already enjoying one of the best asset quality for most of the banks. There are certain pockets like say microfinance which has gotten impacted or there's some bit of a stress in certain credit card segments or unsecured segment, but largely most of the bank books are absolutely fine. You don't see any asset quality challenges. Now in pharma, you would have read a lot of about say CDMO or CRDMO. So basic concept is that a lot of these big pharma companies spend 15-20% of their top line on R&D for introduction of new products. So what is expected is that you will come up or we will see a new product which is going to come up for weight reduction. I think some of the film stars or producers have used some of these drugs to sort of lower their weightage. so which is called as GLP-1. Now this drug itself is expected to be a $180 billion kind of an opportunity. So what I'm trying to highlight is that Indian companies are going to participate. We have big companies like say DVs or a number of other names which are already sort of participating. And this is IT kind of a model along with a manufacturing leg which is attached to it. And one more factor which is going to help is again the fact that there are a lot of trust deficit issues with a big country like China. So while we supply 46% of the generic medicines, there are a number of challenges US faces with respect to China. So which is why prior to Trump, we had seen a Biosecure Act was expected to be passed. Now the basic concern is that Chinese copy the IP. The other factor is that Chinese have already got the database of or the genetic codes of all the citizens. They can manufacture a disease and probably impact a big country like US. So which is why a diversification is expected, and Indian companies are expected to benefit. I'll not spend much of a time, but the economy grows, the premium segment of the market, the households double, and also the fact that the households which are earning or at the lowest bracket, they are also expected to help, and which is what is going to help the overall premiumization which I was talking of. This is broadly I have sort of covered. So alloy wheel penetration has gone up. Alloy wheel used to be a premium segment offering earlier, but now you see a very standard product. Penetration of sunroof has sort of gone up, whether we use it or not, but for leisure purpose, people will buy vehicles with which has got panoramic sunroof. And automatic is something which in my early days I have seen in Gulf countries, but now I think 26% of the vehicles sold are automatic. And so from that perspective, a lot of premiumization is sort of going up, which is why auto is benefiting. Real estate, so in the COVID, the industry was struggling. So you had 55 months of inventory, which is now sort of come down to about 13 odd months, and which is why when the demand supply sort of equation changes, the price appreciation starts happening, which is why in the last 2-3 years we have seen real estate prices have gone up. But our sense is that now going forward you will see a more measured growth in terms of so pricing is not going to increase. At least the industry has realized that so last previous real estate cycle the prices had gone up and volumes really did not grow up so much. I think this time the industry players are quite cognizant of that fact, and you'll see a measured growth both in volumes and pricing. Now hospitals and hotels are largely typically 5-star properties. The way you sort of experience it, one you sort of go with your choice, the other at times you are forced to. And if you look at premium properties, both in hotels and hospitals, you have got about 45 to 50,000 kind of bedrooms or rooms or keys which we have. And our sense is that in case of hospitals, you will see a lot more improvement because of the kind of expansion of the radiology segment. So since we are sort of testing or we are undertaking a lot of testing, so which is why there is an early detection of diseases which happens, and that is benefiting the sector. And this is one sector where you see maximum number of transactions happening both on the listed side or unlisted side. And if you have sort of noticed in the last few years, the amount of money we have been spending on hotels or hospitals has definitely gone up. And our sense is that if your income level increases, you're obviously not going to buy more expensive soap, or while you will buy to some extent, but largely bulk of the money either it is going to be spent on investing or buying sunroof related car, or buying expensive house, or undertaking a leisure destination travel, or in case if God forbid you have to visit to hospital, then you would want one of the best of the facilities. So with that
No, you can take the mic. Yeah.
So I was expecting this question from sort of yes.
Yeah.
Now, see, banking is all about scale. So clearly the preference is towards tier one banks, HDFC Bank. So HDFC Bank, for example, last year the growth was lower than the industry. This year they are going to grow in line with the industry.
Are these slides going to be available to us?
You can.
This is going to be on YouTube also, sir. This is going to be on YouTube as well, and the entire thing is on live on YouTube as well right now. This is right now live on YouTube.
So FY27 onwards, ICICI Bank is expected to sort of deliver industry-leading growth rate. Kotak has already gone through fair amount of transition. There were some regulatory challenges in terms of in between they were not allowed to open account. So all that is sorted. Axis Bank, while both these banks have relatively done well, Axis is cheaper from a valuation perspective, so which is why Axis Bank. While there are a number of other smaller banks, I am just highlighting the. Sir,
So we don't recommend on ICICI Bank.
I am part of ICICI Bank. Yeah. So I can't be recommending. It's a conflict of interest. Now Sir, so
in fact, that is a question, Pankaj, I wanted to ask you. You have not mentioned SBI. I mean, in the large cap, any thoughts?
No, let me complete this and then I'll sort of, obviously you will have some questions, so I'll capture some of that. Right. So for example, on the capital goods and defense, we would like, say, big names like, say, L&T, ABB, Bharat Electronics, since I already spoke that the electronic component is expected to go up. Water is one opportunity where Vatak Vabag looks good to us. In cement, we like, see, most of the companies are acquired at $90 to $100 EV per ton, and the existing companies are valued at lesser, so which is why Ultratech, JK Cement, and Dalmia Bharat. Hotels, sir,
We'll take the question, sir.
I'll come to that. So, for example, in hotels, we like Indian hotels, so this is not the complete list. This is just to sort of give you a flavor that the kind of names what we like. So, for example, Indian hotels, ITC hotels. So, for example, it is half of the size of Indian hotels in terms of keys, but 1/3 in terms of market cap. Or if I look at in the power space, Tata Power is making all the right moves, whether it is a nuclear or small modular reactor which we are looking at, or NTPC. So for example, transformer space we like, but most of these companies are very expensive. Otherwise I would have. So we need to have a combination of both. On the auto side, M&M and Lumax is looking good to us. Hospitals, Narayana is something which is a fairly transparent hospital. Then HCG is something which we like. So for example, since you are from NCR, Max Hospital is one of the biggest names. It is the biggest company which has got market cap. In terms of market cap, so P investor like KKR actually invested in a company like Max 5-6 years back. They made 5x kind of a return in the last 5 years, and they were completely exited. And they have now come into a company like HCG, Healthcare Global. And our sense is that it's a hospital dedicated to the cancer. And hopefully they should be doing well here. Besides this, we like Apollo. Now on the real estate side, what we prefer is say something like in real estate, the promoter pedigree needs to be very good. So which is why Aditya Birla Real Estate, Max States. So in Max State, half of their portfolio is on the commercial side, where the New York Life is their funding partner or financial partner. So that looks good to us. Metal, again, subject to volatility, what we would prefer is Hindalco or Jindal Steel and Power, besides JSW Steel.
Yeah, okay. So Pankaj, fine, you can take this slide. I think this is important, so please go ahead.
So corrections are there. People expect that now also, since we have seen a bit of a challenge or bit of a uh, anxiety is there in terms of what kind of actions India is going to take against Pakistan and the overall implication. But prior to that, we had challenges in terms of earlier FI selling and then Trump related factor. So if you sort of consolidate the various kind of risk which impact the market, every year large cap has the tendency to correct 10 to 15 odd percent, mid caps 15 to 25%, and small cap 20 to 35%.
How would you differentiate market power and market power?
So when we talk of market correction, this is the correction what we have seen every year, right? Every year in the index, be it large cap, mid cap, and small cap. So even in this year, we have seen a 14% kind of a correction. Now, for example, we are heading into a situation where there are expectation that the Indian government might take some action, right, against Pakistan, and it is possible that uh, some reaction will be seen in the market. And historically, if I look at, there were three incidences. We had Pulwama, we had 26 by 11, and then we had Kargil. So during Kargil, we had seen a correction of about 11-12 odd percent. And but the good part is that 3 months down the line, the markets have captured, or markets have recouped most of the losses and actually given double-digit kind of returns. So all I'm trying to highlight is that risk is going to come into various forms and shapes, but important thing is what you do in that. So for example, if in the recent rally from the levels like say 21,750, we hadn't really participated, probably this could be an incident which might give you another opportunity to come into market, though I don't believe that we are going to hit those kind of levels. Sum total, we are expecting 7 to 8% kind of a GDP growth rate, 12 to 15% CAGR in equities, and a GDP of $7 trillion.
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to sort of take.
So we will take some question and answers, but Pankaj, just two things which I think from an audience point of view. One is on tariffs. So the tariff part, I just want to ask you from a perspective of risks and opportunities. There are three sectors. One is, technology. Second is pharma. Third is, merchandise. Where do you see the opportunities on tariffs? Because that's a reality which is there in front of all investors.
Oh yes. So for example, one impact we have already seen in a big sector like technology sort of. So we have seen this sector correcting about 25 odd percent this year. Because of the reason that prior to this, the expectation was that the dollar revenue growth would be 4 to 5% this year, improving to 5 to 6% FY26 and 7 to 8 odd percent FY27. But FY26 recent commentary suggests that is going to be lower than what FY25 has been. And this is more to do with US only, because 50% of the IT companies' revenues largely comes from US, and if US is engaged in a tariff war, US is expected to witness a recession of at least a quarter, lower growth rates, lower discretionary spending. IT we have already seen. But in case if Trump does a U-turn, which he is known for, then you never know. Technology from a absolute alpha level can be the best performing sector over the next 12 to 18 odd months. But again, it's a wait and watch. Now, sector which is going to benefit, so for example, pharma. Now, pharma, I already spoke about a segment called CDMO or hospital, which is expected to do well. For US exporters, so when you look at the commentary from some of the recent companies, what they're clearly saying is that if I am producing 1,000 tablets, the cost of producing that in India is about $5 to $6. But if I have to do it in US, the cost is going to be $35 to $40. So even with the tariff also, it is unlikely that you'll see a major production. So pharma is expected to be a beneficiary. The other fact is that you have segments like electronics, which is going to be a beneficiary. We are already seeing decent and enough cases of shift of manufacturing expected to happen from countries like say Vietnam, because Largely, these were destinations of Chinese exports amassed into certain countries. So India is expected to sort of benefit. Good part is that even the US also acknowledges that we'll be the first country who's going to do a bilateral trade agreement with US. So it's a very long drawn process. And hopefully in this entire our sense is that India will be at a tariff advantage, tariff arbitrage advantage, and that is going to sort of benefit.
So right, I mean, where it has been today, there are two things. One, obviously Indians, there is a lot of physical household gold, but nobody has invested. Not many people have invested as a financial investment product or as an asset. So where do you think gold is the right level? Do we wait for corrections and long term a nice place to be in? REITs, REITs we're not doing right now, but we will cover our views on real estate. That's what we're done.
So on gold, so my clear answer is that this is not a good time to invest in gold, and I'll back it with some historical perspective.
Gold ETFs are right now the only ways you could buy. Yeah. So we just hear Pankaj view, sir.
See, the best time when you look at gold, last 20 years, it is given slightly better returns than what even Nifty has given, right? But giving an impression that gold is the best asset class. But again, the performance has not been in a uniform manner. To give you perspective, अगर आप 2002 से 2012 तक देखते हैं 10 ईयर पीरियड में गोल्ड का भाव करीब आई थिंक यूज टू बी अबाउट 5,000 रुपीज़ पर 10 ग्राम्स और 1 तोला का होता था एंड दैट हैड गॉन अप टू अबाउट 30,000 रुपीज़ सो 6x काइंड ऑफ अ रिटर्न इन 10 ईयर्स बट उसके बाद में अगर आप देखेंगे 2012 से 2018 में गोल्ड सो नहीं एक्चुअली मैं आ रहा हूँ उधर पे सो फॉर एग्जांपल 2000 उस पीरियड में 6 ईयर पीरियड में इंटरनेशनल गोल्ड प्राइसेस जो थे 45% करेक्ट हुए सो अबाउट 1900 से करीब 1050 हुए बट डोमेस्टिक प्राइसेस उतने करेक्ट नहीं हुए लार्जली बिकॉज हमारा करेंसी ड्यूरिंग दैट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम डिप्रिशिएटेड फ्रॉम 45 to 65 सो फ्रॉम दैट परस्पेक्टिव इट डिड नॉट द डोमेस्टिक प्राइसेस उस हिसाब से करेक्ट नहीं हुए अगेन 2019 से देखेंगे तो ओवरऑल गोल्ड प्राइसेस 30,000 से लेके आप लिटरली 1 लाख तक टच कर चुके हैं तो 3x काइंड ऑफ अ रिटर्न वी हैव ऑलरेडी सीन सो अभी इफ़ यू लुक एट वाई द गोल्ड हैज़ डन सो वेल इज़ दैट यूएस क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि वॉट एवर ट्रेड डेफिसिट दे आर कैरिंग विथ रिस्पेक्टिव कंट्रीज सो इंडिया के साथ में मान लीजिए $45 बिलियन का है चाइना के साथ में 300 है सो वॉट यूएस इज क्लियरली सही कि आप जितना मेरे से एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हो आपको उतना ही इम्पोर्ट भी करना पड़ेगा मुझसे सो उसका एक इम्प्लीकेशन होने वाला है उसका इम्प्लीकेशन ये होगा कि पहले जो आप एक्सपोर्ट करते थे आप ज़्यादा एक्सपोर्ट करते थे एंड जो भी आप एक्सपोर्ट करते थे वो एज अ रिजर्व यूएस डॉलर में रखते थे अगर वो कम होगा तो यूएस डॉलर नीचे जाएगा एंड विच इज़ वाई डॉलर हैज़ सीन अ करेक्शन देन बिकॉज ऑफ टैरिफ यूएस का जो ग्रोथ रेट है ओवरऑल एक्सपेक्टेड है कि 2% की जगह वो 1.4% होगा सो दैट इज़ ऑल्सो गेटिंग इम्पैक्टेड सिमिलरली टैरिफ की वजह से इन्फ्लेशन ज़्यादा होगा सो विच इज़ वाई द एक्सपेक्टेशन इज़ दैट इन्फ्लेशन इज़ गोइंग टू रिमेन एट एलिवेटेड लेवल्स एंड देन यूएस का जो फिजिकल डेफिसिट है वो इंडिया से एक्चुअली ज़्यादा है सो हमारा बजट में इफ़ यू लुक एट फिजिकल डेफिसिट इज़ 4.4 विच इज़ वॉट इज़ एक्सपेक्टेड फॉर दिस ईयर यूएस का फिजिकल डेफिसिट इज़ मोर देन 6%. सो जितने भी वेरिएबल्स हैं वो सब एक्सट्रीम पे हैं एंड जिसका बेनिफिट गोल्ड को मिला है एंड विच इज़ वाई गोल्ड हैज़ रैलिड सम 34% इन द लास्ट 4 months. इतने बड़े रैली में एटलीस्ट कोई एसेट क्लास ऐसी नहीं होती है जो कि हमेशा चलती रहेगी और करेक्ट नहीं होगी आई मीन मार्केट्स भी करेक्ट होते हैं तो ऐसा टू एक्सपेक्ट दैट कि गोल्ड चलता रहेगा ऐसा आई थिंक वो एक एक्सट्रीम व्यू है सो विच इज़ वाई आई वुड नॉट सजेस्ट टू बाई गोल्ड टिपिकली जब हम कस्टमर्स को सजेस्ट करते हैं तो आप सी एलोकेशन में आप ये कर सकते हैं कि 5 से 15% जनरली एडवाइस किया जाता है कि आप गोल्ड रखिए 15% हायर लेवल पे है तो मैं अभी सजेस्ट करूंगा कि आप 15% पे बिल्कुल मत रहिए आप लोअर एंड ऑफ द रेंज पे रहिए 5% से ज़्यादा आपका पोर्टफोलियो का नहीं होना चाहिए कहीं ना कहीं मुझे लगता है कि ये करेक्शन नहीं होगा। और एक जो चीज़ हुई थी कि पहले रुपी ज़्यादा डिप्रिशिएट हुआ था, अभी चांसेस उसके कम लगते हैं, डॉलर ज़्यादा प्रेशर में रहने वाला है एंड रुपी। सो फ्रॉम दैट पर्सपेक्टिव जो एक बेनिफिट मिला था डोमेस्टिक प्राइसेस कम करेक्शन होने का डिस्पाइट ग्लोबल करेक्शन ज़्यादा होने का, आई थिंक वो बेनिफिट भी मेरे हिसाब से अभी नहीं है।
Sure. So we now take few questions, please.
Volatile situation. What should be the strategy, investment strategy?
Okay.
The market is very volatile. What should be the
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन सर। सो देयर आर टू अप्रोचेस। एक होता है कि लोग डर के कि ठीक है अभी मैं लेट द इवेंट पैन आउट, सब ठीक होने दीजिए, देन उसके बाद में आई लुक एट व्हाट टू इन्वेस्ट। The other is you start sensing opportunities. So best of the times for wealth creation has happened in the 2008 market correction, COVID, and you never know Trump, and in case if because of this war. So again it's a change in mindset. So one mindset says कि let this event ये event खत्म हो जाने दीजिए, सब होगा उसके बाद में देखेंगे। But it is very much possible that in this panic a lot of people might sell stocks and a lot of good stocks might be available at levels which is never seen. So which is why I am saying that अगर आपने recent rally में participate नहीं किया है तो हो सकता है कि this is event in the making which might help you to sort of build a good quality portfolio.
Pankaj ji, you have not talked about oil and gas sector. We can see that there is a lot of capex is being planned in oil and gas sector. How do you see IOCL, BPCL, HPCL and ONGC in the coming years?
So when you look at oil and gas sector, एक तो जो सबसे बड़ा बेनिफिट मिलता था ऑयल एंड गैस सेक्टर को कि क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस चलते थे। आई थिंक क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस मेरे हिसाब से कहीं जाने वाले नहीं है, बिकॉज आपका प्राइमरी सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी क्या था, कोल था प्लस ऑयल था। अभी आपके पास में सोलर है, विंड है, एंड देन अभी आप देखेंगे तो इवन न्यूक्लियर इज ऑल्सो एक्सपेक्टेड टू बिकम एन ऑप्शन। सो मल्टीपल सोर्सेज आपके एनर्जी के आपके पास में है, तो ऑयल आई डोंट थिंक इज स्ट्रक्चरली गोइंग टू गो अप। अभी डोमेस्टिक कंपनीज को फ़ायदा किस एंगल से हो सकता है, वन ऑन दी प्रोडक्शन साइड स्पेशली। अगर आप देखेंगे कि ONGC या ऑयल इंडिया, आई थिंक दे आर ONGC इज रोपिंग इन फॉरेन पार्टनर आफ्टर लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम बॉम्बे हाई से जो उनका प्रोडक्शन आता है टू डू अ इन्हांस रिकवरी। तो अगर वो वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ वगैरह आता है तो वो एक डेफिनेटली पॉजिटिव है। दूसरा ये है कि जो पेट्रोकेमिकल साइड में है, तो अभी आपका सी ऑयल एंड आप ज़्यादा पेट्रोल डीजल तो कंज्यूम नहीं करेंगे, एट बेस्ट ग्रोथ होगा तो 2-3% होने वाला है। बट ये शिफ्ट जो होगा वो ज़्यादातर प्लास्टिक्स में होगा या पेट्रोकेमिकल्स में होगा, तो वहाँ पे डिमांड इज़ एक्सपेक्टेड टू बी सॉर्ट ऑफ रोबस्ट। बट इन कंपनीज़ को उसके हिसाब से नहीं देखना चाहिए मेरे हिसाब से। ये कंपनीज़ का अगर आप वैल्यूएशन देखेंगे तो 5 या 6 के पी मल्टीपल पे चलते हैं, एंड ये सारी कंपनीज़ अगर आप देखें डाइवर्सिफाई कर रहे हैं, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के कुछ प्रोडक्ट डाल रहे हैं, प्लस ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन में पार्टिसिपेट करने का कोशिश करें, अगर वो होगा तो देन चांसेस हैं कि इनका मल्टीपल्स एक्सपैंड हो जाए। जैसे कि मैं एग्जांपल देना चाहूँगा, एक शुगर सेक्टर था। शुगर सेक्टर में आप जनरली तो इंडियन शुगर कंज्यूम नहीं करोगे, आप हु वुड वांट टू डू दैट, क्योंकि हेल्थ हज़ार्ड होता है। बट जब आपने इथेनॉल ब्लेंड करना चालू किया, आप 20% इथेनॉल ब्लेंडिंग तक पे आ गए, तो देन आप देखिए जो ये भी 5 से 6 के मल्टीपल पे चलते थे, एंड विच इज़ बाय कंपनीज लाइक बलरामपुर चीनी, ये 10 या 12 के मल्टीपल पे चले गए। तो अगर आपको बाय करना है तो इस पर्सपेक्टिव से बाय करिए, डोंट बाय इट कि क्रूड ऑयल चल जाएगा या कुछ और होगा, बट ये सारे ट्रांजिशन थोड़ा टाइम लगाएंगे।
extending that gentleman's question about volatility, do you suggest that one should stick to index funds rather than going into specifics? That is one question. Second is diversifying one's asset holding. Should one enter US and China ETFs or something like that? Say NASDAQ against S&P or Hang Seng?
So when you have to look at say diversification, so our sense is that whether active or passive, you should be there in the market, right? Now again, there can be multiple choices. So for example, if you are willing to do some bit of homework, direct stocks, and again if you are entry into markets, or if you are first time entering into markets, then large cap ही होना चाहिए। once you have been in the market for some time, that is when you should look at exposure towards mid cap and small caps, right? And look at sectors and stocks जो simple हो, easy to understand हो. बहुत complicated sectors, stocks again कब खराबी होगा, you'll not be able to figure out. Similarly, when you look at a market like US, if you understand US market very well, otherwise if you don't, answer is very simple. Same is the case with China. At least India में you can notice some trends कि भाई hospital में क्या हो रहा है या real estate में क्या हो रहा है in your micro market. So you will be able to correlate. So and if I have to sort of take a bigger view, see US has already done very well. एक concept use होता है US exceptionalism. मतलब US will continue to do well compared to the rest of the world. But I think probably they are entering into a scenario where this is no longer going to be the case. So I am not, my personal view is that though मैं भी US market आपकी तरह नहीं समझता हूँ, but my personal so my personal view is that US is not a great place to be. See China again, the challenge with China is that see China में अगर आप देखिए पिछले 15-20 सालों में the kind of growth what they have seen, but stock market में वो capture नहीं हुआ है, because again it's been driven by companies which again have linkages with the government. So somewhere down the line it's not a fair market, I would say, from an investor perspective. I think Indian markets is fairly well represented. In fact, we have seen PSUs also doing very well, because कहीं ना कहीं सरकार को भी लगता है कि बेचना is not a great strategy. It is better कि आप उनको better build करें, अच्छे से चलाएं and dividend लें. That is a better strategy. So I think अभी आप देखेंगे बजट में कोई disinvestment का बड़ा टारगेट का बात होता ही नहीं.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
You have not covered non-banking finance companies.
Sir, I had a limited time, but if I have to sort of come on the NBFCs.
And small companies, banking small companies like AU, small bank and so they are growing faster than these banks which you are talking.
Correct. So I thought that I'll start with large caps and then probably mid caps.
And if you are looking for a volume or a jump,
Correct.
you have to look for those companies
Correct.
as well as
Correct.
तो ये तो 4-5% में साल में एंड हो जाती है, वो जितनी उतनी है.
सर मुझे मालूम नहीं था आपका रिस्क एपेटाइट इतना ज़्यादा, नहीं तो अदरवाइज आई वुड हैव आई केम विद अ जेनेरिक. हाँ 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 हाँ. तो हाँ,
just to tell you, sir, large caps भी बहुत अच्छा returns करके देते हैं. But Pankaj, please take, I think mid cap as an idea, maybe. Yeah.
We are looking for growth.
हाँ हाँ.
I understand.
Yeah.
But what basically we are looking for a
Absolutely.
quantum jump. Of course, risk is
हाँ.
also quantum, I agree. But that is the amount of pleasure which you have.
Yeah. तो सर आई हाँ
लो ना, मजा तो लो.
हाँ. So
बैठे हुए हैं तो वो तो बात जमा रहे हैं, वो वाली बात नहीं है सर.
Noted.
सो अगर टीयर 2 में देखना होगा बैंक्स में, तो मेरे हिसाब से फेडरल बैंक काफ़ी अच्छा लगता है. ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट CSB बैंक इज़ व्हाट वी लाइक, बिकॉज 45% गोल्ड लोन पोर्टफोलियो है. देन NBFCs में L&T फाइनेंस है जो अच्छा लगता है. श्रीराम फाइनेंस है, हालांकि ये बड़ा कंपनी है, बट इसमें वैल्यूएशन का हमें ओवरऑल. जियो फाइनेंस का देखिए अभी कोई बिजनेस है नहीं, अगर मैं उसका बिजनेस मॉडलिंग करना चाहूँगा तो कुछ है नहीं कि मैं उस पर आपको कुछ बता सकूँ. बजाज फाइनेंस बिल्कुल अच्छा लगता है. देखिए अभी इसमें वैल्यूएशन का भी थोड़ा एक हेडरूम है, एंड देन दिस कंपनी से कि 25-28% ये ग्रो करते रहेंगे, तो डेफिनेटली है. बट सर को थोड़े स्मॉल कैप्स और मिड कैप चाहिए थे, तो आई थॉट.
So Pankaj, maybe small cap in, if you could just 3 small caps and 3 mid cap ideas across sectors, maybe if that's something which you could talk about.
Let the question come. I'll sort of.
Okay, so please go through.
My question is that private sector capital has been later.
हाँ.
Now it is supposed to be at least not multiple of previous multiples.
हाँ.
And frontline stocks you have mentioned, but where do you feel that it will percolate to the supply side and ancillary companies getting benefited from this capex?
नहीं तो I am still not clear.
Clear in the sense that the capex, there will be many support companies which will be supporting this capex to happen.
Correct.
Maybe in the supply side or maybe in the execution side. So where and in those companies you can see more growth in the valuation. So have you made some silos that these will be the beneficiaries where the benefits will percolate?
So I already spoke about transformer as a segment, but मैंने उसमें companies नहीं बताई. For example, जैसे transformer में overall sense is कि 9 HVDC projects का tendering होगा, जिसमें से करीब I think 2 का announcement आ चुका है. एक HVDC tender 20,000 करोड़ का होता है या 18,000 करोड़ का होता है. अभी जो हाँ, तो मैं एक हाईलाइट वही कर रहा था, जैसे कि पावर, जैसे कि आप वाटर में देखेंगे तो वाटेक मैंने हाईलाइट किया. अभी फॉर एग्जांपल ऑटो में देखिए तो सरकार जो लाने का कोशिश कर रहा है आपका हायर एडॉप्शन ऑफ एडास काइंड ऑफ अ कंसेप्ट इन कमर्शियल व्हीकल्स, उनको सेफर बनाने के लिए, जिसमें लेन असिस्ट रहेगा. बाकी तो उसके लिए जैसे आपका ZF स्टीयरिंग हो गया कंपनी, इट्स अ MNC कंपनी बट लार्जली डेडिकेटेड इनटू अ पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट लाइक दिस. I hope sir you can mail me and मैं आपको specific अगर आपका query है ना तो because it's a very broad capex कोई एक sector में नहीं होता है. So for example there is a company called Aeroflex Industry which we like, again ये metallic hoses बनाता है. Company is talking of 25% kind of a growth rate because जो भी आपके metallic hoses होते हैं ये सब आपके basic industries में लगते हैं, oil and gas में रखते हैं, refinery में लगते हैं, प्लस जितने भी high pressure आपको fluid manage करना होता है उसमें लगते हैं. पहले आपके polymer based लगते थे, अब ये metal based लगते हैं. तो again मेरे पास में options हैं, but I can come. Yeah.
We can discuss. So we'll take one last question. I mean, with your permission, sir, just 30 seconds. Okay. Sir, he's here. So, इनके बाद आप कर लेते हैं, please.
Will you be open for something on mutual funds?
So our team will discuss with you, sir. I mean, a team.
I had a question on that. Which is the new one, which is on income plus arbitrage?
Sir, I am largely a stock, but I can help you with any because I have a mutual fund team which does track all the mutual funds. So you can mail it to me. I'll have that responded, or you can. I'll make my analyst talk to you also. So that is fine.
Or so Danshu is here. So the question is on which mutual funds would we recommend investors?
Achha. So pankaj.pandey@icicisecurities.com. And last question, sort of. So some of the stocks which I like. So for example, HCG I already mentioned, which I like. Natco also is another company which I like. Then Piramal Pharma within the CRDMO space is what I like. Heikel again is a company again. 60% is the CDMO. Philips Carbon Black is what I like. I spoke about ZF steering. Now in real estate, one way to sort of play is through a tile manufacturer. We have seen Kajaria getting impacted. This is one company which does or where the volume growth rate was twice compared to last year, despite the fact that this real estate cycle is stronger. Then Aeroflex I mentioned, and HEG if someone is interested in the metals, because that is another stock which I like. So these are some of the stocks which I like. See, as a team we track 250 plus stocks across large caps, mid caps and small caps. So this is not the complete offering I have.
You stopped somewhere on the transformers.
Transformers, any
So for example, you have first two has been won by Hitachi and BHEL. But you have companies like say Siemens also there, you have CG Power which are there, but some of them are not, we track them, but it's not a recommendation I would say. Because see, when we have to track that stock, it has to be available at right value also. But the opportunity pie for this segment is fairly large, and it's not domestic, even export also.
You covered very well pharma, CRDMO space. There is one more sector of pharma which Indian companies are working, which is on more of research kind of thing, like getting into new molecules, be it work hard, like getting into into 5222 and 5288 kind of things, or the Suven Life Science, which is working on NC drugs, which are coming out with newer molecules. Of course, they could be in phase 2 or phase 3 trial, and I understand that risk associated high. But do you track any of such which can really create fortunes for the company? Even Bocard is at probably 10x of what it was 1 year.
So CDMO is again, you have various segments. So for example, a company like Syngene, what we cover, came out with bad set of numbers, but these are this is largely into what you call on the discovery side. A lot of other CDMO are on the say for example DVs. So DVs is not on the discovery side, but
that will something which is not on something which is on discovery can really create fortunes.
So for example, Heikel, 30% of the revenues is expected to come from human CDMO and then the crop CDMO. So 60% of the revenues is going to come. And if I recollect it right, they've done a capex of 700 odd crores. You take any asset turnover of 1.5 times, they're going to generate additional turnover of 1,000 crores. Current turnover would be about 1800 odd. And they have already done the capex. FY26 is where we would expect the numbers to start kicking in.
Okay. So yes, please, you've been waiting.
Which one? हाँ. Correct. So सर कहीं तो आपको मेरी हेल्प भी लगेगी.
और मैं शायद एक पंकज एक इसका सर आंसर ये हो जाता है जनरल इन्वेस्टिंग के अंदर, स्टॉक मार्केट के अंदर खासकर, बिकॉज जो आप बोल रहे हैं ना 1350 और 1650 और 1350 की जो जर्नी होती है ना, वो इन्वेस्टर्स को अनसेटल कर देती है कि मतलब आपको लग रहा है कि आई मीन सो आई थिंक दी थिंग इज अबाउट अंडरस्टैंडिंग द फंडामेंटल्स. अगर आप थोड़ा लॉन्ग टर्म के कन्विंस है ना स्टॉक के ऊपर, तो ये 2-3 महीने के पैनिक से कुछ फायदा नहीं होता है. मतलब इसको आप और बहुत ज़्यादा सर हम एक स्लाइड भी आपको दिखाने वाले हैं हम जो अपने इन्वेस्टर्स की सर वो इनकी बात कर रहे थे, वाटर की बात कर रहे थे, वो वाटर बहुत ही तो सर आप क्यों घबरा रहे हैं? मतलब इसको होल्ड कीजिए ना. और बट आई टेल यू सर, मतलब जो मैंने एक स्टडी दिखाई, मुझे शो यू द स्टडी, जितना एसेट एलोकेशन हैज टू बी वेरी नॉर्मल. इफ यू आर ओवर इन्वेस्टेड इन अ स्टॉक नो, देन व्हाट वी हैव सीन इन्वेस्टर्स इसकी अच्छी कंपनी भी हम होल्ड नहीं कर पाते हैं. अगर आपने 5-7% एलोकेशन कर रखा है ना, देन इन्वेस्टर्स काइंड ऑफ डोंट. हाँ. Thank you, sir.
So I have a colleague of mine, Jay Thakkar, who's the head of derivatives. So any kind of a short term. Plus, I have also a technical team. So we have people who can help you out with.
So sir, now we will, sir, with your permission, if I may, we will go with the session, right? We will have Pankaj is here. We are here. We'll take all more questions, right? We'll just go with the session. Otherwise, there is a lot more to cover as well, right? हाँ, तो मैं हिंदी में भी बोलता हूँ सर, आई मीन एज फ्लुएंट एज हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश, ठीक है. तो हाँ, तो बस एक सुधांशु जस्ट टॉक्स अबाउट द म्यूचुअल फंड जो उन्होंने पूछा था, बट मैं उसके बाद जय, इसमें हमारे में से कितने लोगों ने कभी ट्रेडिंग करी है, मतलब मार्केट में आई मीन कोई ऑप्शंस करा है? सो एनीबडी हैज़? सो कुछ क्वेश्चंस हम जय के लिए कि एज एन एनालिस्ट वो अगर ऑप्शंस करते हैं तो वो क्या देखते हैं, एंड अगर हम ट्रेड कर रहे हैं, अभी देखिए मार्केट अभी देखिए 24,200 पे था, 24,200 एक सपोर्ट था, अभी 24,200 से कहाँ हमको लग रहा है ओवर द नेक्स्ट 1-2 मंथ्स. सो दिस इज ओनली फॉर पीपल हु आर लिटिल बिट एक्टिव इन द मार्केट. कहाँ सपोर्ट लग रहा है, जैसे कि अगर आप देखें रिलायंस के अंदर, रिलायंस 1200 पे था, अभी 1300 पे गया. 1200 से 50 से लेकर 1300 के बीच में 4.5 करोड़ शेयर्स. Now the stock has moved up and ये short covering होती है, and there is a big rally in the stocks. तो वो थोड़े बहुत opportunities जय बोलेंगे. So उसके बाद हम थोड़े से investor platform पे आएंगे. तो थोड़ा सा we will continue a little fast and we will take all questions. So please bear with us for another 45 minutes to 54 minutes. But Shudhanshu, quickly if you could talk about those mutual funds. Yeah. No, thank you very much.
I think किसी ने बोला हिंदी में बोलो, I'll try and speak in Hindi only.
म्यूचुअल फंड पे इनफैक्ट आपने देखा जब मार्केट सितंबर के महीने में टुक अ डाउनवर्ड टर्न, मार्केट थोड़ा नीचे गई थी, तो हम एज अ हाउस हम शुरू से ही बोलते आए हैं कि लार्ज और मिड मतलब स्मॉल और मिड कैप्स में थोड़ा सा आप कम रखिए, और थीमेटिक फंड्स हमने थोड़े डूबे हुए किए। तो अगर आप देखोगे लार्जली हमारा जो कॉन्सेंट्रेशन है या जो हम डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं, इट्स टुवर्ड्स द लार्ज कैप ओनली। तो लार्ज कैप में टिपिकली इट इज़ लार्जली द लार्ज कैप ICICI वैल्यू डिस्कवरी फंड, HDFC लार्ज कैप, पराग परिक फ्लेक्सी कैप, these are the fund we are talking about। एक हमारा अपना फंड है जिसका पिछले 20 साल का कैगर इज रफली 21%, ICICI मल्टी एसेट एलोकेटर फंड। तो उसमें क्या होता है, एडवांटेज क्या होता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने पीछे देखा होगा मार्केट में इक्विटी बहुत हाई था, तो हमारा फंड को जब सेंस किया कि मार्केट थोड़ी नीचे जाएगी, तो एट वन पॉइंट इन टाइम हमारा इक्विटी का एक्सपोजर उसमें 48% रह गया था, एंड इट वॉज मोर टुवर्ड्स डेट एंड गोल्ड। दैट इज़ वॉट वी कीप ऑन डूइंग। बट लार्जली अगर जो अभी भी बात कर रहे थे, इट इज़ लार्जली टुवर्ड्स लार्ज कैप दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट। स्मॉल और मिड कैप में थोड़ा। और दूसरा एज अ हाउस भी बताता हूँ एक और चीज़, म्यूचुअल फंड में अगर हमने कोई पीछे थीमेटिक कॉल दी थी ना, तो हमारा ये नहीं एंडेवर रहता कि हम आपको बोलते हैं कि आप इसमें से बेच के निकल जाओ दूसरे में डाल दो। बिकॉज होता है क्या, आप अगर एक में बेच के, लेट से मैंने एक म्यूचुअल फंड खरीदा 10 लाख रुपए का, उसकी वैल्यू होगी 20 लाख रुपए। द मोमेंट आई टेल यू आप उसमें निकल जाओ, तो आपको उसमें 12.5% लॉन्ग टर्म टैक्स होगा, 20% टैक्स होगा, फिर आपको एक्सपेंस रेशियो पुरानी में देनी पड़ेगी, नए में आप एग्जिट लोड लगेगा और नए में एंट्री लोड लगेगा। तो एज अ हाउस वी डोंट वांट टू डू दैट। तो हमारा क्लियर है, मैं फिर रिपीट कर रहा हूँ, इट इज़ लार्जली द लार्ज एंड मिड कैप्स, एंड आई हैव नेम्ड यू ऑल दोज म्यूचुअल फंड्स। या सर, या
आप बोल सकते हैं सर।
उसमें सुनिए, क्या है कि NAV जो है वो मार्केट के हिसाब से ऊपर नीचे होता रहता है, ठीक है। अब हम म्यूचुअल फंड में जो पैसा लगाते हैं, हम एक एक्सपेक्टेशन से लगाते हैं कि जो फंड मैनेजर है उसको मैनेज कर रहा है, तो अगर मार्केट बहुत ज़्यादा वॉलेटाइल है तो उसका NAV बहुत ज़्यादा नीचे ऊपर नहीं हो। फंड मैनेजर्स का क्या रोल है इसमें?
मैंने आपको अभी एक मल्टी एसेट एलोकेटर फंड का बताया था। तो होता क्या है सर, उसका रोल बताता हूँ कि जैसे आपको सपोज अब मुझे सेंस आई कि मार्केट ऊपर जाएगी, तो फंड मैनेजर जैसे मल्टी एसेट एलोकेटर फंड है, उसमें क्या होता है, आपका इक्विटी होती है, गोल्ड होता है, सिल्वर होता है, डेट होता है। तो मान लो फंड मैनेजर का कैश होता है, ट्रैप्स जैसे TREPS बोलते हैं हम। तो फंड मैनेजर क्या करता है, उसको अगर मार्केट लग रहा है ऊपर जा रही है तो वो इक्विटी का एक्सपोजर बढ़ा लेगा, नीचे जाएगी तो इक्विटी का एक्सपोजर कम कर लेगा। एक्टिव फंड में ये डिफरेंस होता है, दैट इज ओनली। जैसे मैं आपको बताता हूँ, जैसे इंडेक्स फंड है, आज निफ्टी का टॉप कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट है HDFC बैंक, वो 16-17% के करीब है। तो फंड मैनेजर को अगर कोई कल मतलब ICICI लार्ज कैप फंड में लेट से HDFC बैंक की वैल्यू हमारी 15% है, उनको लगता है यहाँ से इसमें वैल्यू नहीं है, तो वो उसको घटा के 12% कर देगा। लेकिन अगर वो निफ्टी खरीदा हुआ इंडेक्स तो वहाँ पे 16% रहेगा। वो उसका ये रोल होता है सर, फंड मैनेजर। आई होप आई आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन।
सर फिर NAV क्यों इतना नीचे मार्केट के हिसाब से नीचे ऊपर आता है?
देखो सर, NAV तो होगा, जैसे मान लो फंड मैनेजर करता क्या है, उसने मान लो 10 लाख रुपए के स्टॉक खरीदने हैं, 10 लाख रुपए के इक्वलेंट स्टॉक खरीद लेगा जो भी उसने अपना कॉम्पोजिशन बनाया है। तो अगर मार्केट ऊपर जाएगी तो वो ऊपर जाएगा, मार्केट नीचे जाएगी तो नीचे जाएगा। बट हाँ, एक्टिव फंड मैनेजर कई बार क्या करता है, वो थोड़ा ये देखता है कि उसकी वॉलेटिलिटी कम होती है। उस केस में जो आपको, इफ़ आई वर टू आंसर यू, अगर आप पूरे इक्विटी बेस्ड म्यूचुअल फंड में होंगे, देयर इज स्टिल अ चांस कि आपका ऊपर नीचे ज़्यादा होगा। लेकिन आप जैसे मल्टी एसेट तो मल्टी एसेट फंड में होंगे तो फिर आपको इशू क्या होगा, इक्विटी का एक्सपोजर कम हो जाएगा, तो आपको वॉलेटिलिटी कम दिखेगी। जैसे मैं थोड़े दिन पहले तक मैं बताता हूँ, निफ्टी की YTD रिटर्न नेगेटिव और नेगेटिव के आसपास थी, वो फंड सिर्फ 1% गिरा था, जबकि यहाँ पे जो ड्रॉप था वो 7-8% का हो चुका था। दैट इज व्हाट, वही मैं आई थिंक यही आप कहना चाह रहे थे ना सर। या थैंक यू।
Sudhanshu is the zonal head for ICICI Bank for Noida region. So thank you, Sudhanshu, for you taking out the next. So now go to Jay. This session we will do on, as I said, on 2 parts. One, Jay, अभी के मार्केट में at 24,000 kind of levels right now, थोड़ा करेक्शन भी परसों हुआ था, कहाँ लग रहा है आपको मार्केट फ्रॉम अ डाउनसाइड पर्सपेक्टिव की लेवल्स पे, और अगर अपसाइड पे, और कौन से स्टॉक्स में आपको शॉर्ट कवरिंग की अपॉर्चुनिटीज दिख रही हैं, वो आप बताएं।
श्योर। हाय, हेलो एवरीवन। वेल, see, market में we have seen a good correction coming from 26,300 to 21,750, ठीक है ना। तो एक अच्छा खासा करेक्शन इज व्हाट वी हैव सीन। Quant wise अगर हम देखें market, so basically is my slide working? PPT. So quant wise अगर हम देखें, so you know we expected कि if market falls, okay, then there should be a standard, or you know, maximum there can be a standard deviation of 1.5 times on the downside, and on the upside market can expect up to, you know, 3 standard deviation. So basically this is what quantitatively we say कि कितना deviate होता है market अपने average से. So ये सारे statistical terms है, but we expected that, you know, if market in the worst case scenario falls, then it will fall to 21,800, and if it goes up, then it can go to 27,000. 27,500. So I mean 21,800, I think more or less we have seen the bottom. Panic तो हम देख चुके हैं. Secondly, you know what unfortunate event what has happened in Kashmir. I mean definitely, you know, we all know about it. But then historically what we have seen, I mean Pankaj also mentioned about it, that you know whatever we saw during Kargil and Pulwama kind of events. Basically market reacts negatively at that point of time, but you know what, historically is not here in India, it's globally. With this kind of events happening, market somehow bottoms, and what Pankaj said, that thereafter you see good 2, 3, 4 months of movement. So I think that 21,800 is a good support for the positional perspective. But अगर इसमें हम जो अगर fall देखने मिला, I don't think we should be going below 22,800, even if you compare it with the US and all. I mean किसको 2008 में 26/11 पता है, ताज में अटैक जो हुआ था, you know, market had created a bottom during Lehman Brothers crisis at 2225. 2225 पे निफ्टी ने बॉटम बनाया था. उसके बाद इमीडिएटली वी सॉ ताज अटैक, मार्केट ने लो नहीं तोड़ा. ताज के बाद वी सॉ सत्यम स्कैम विच ब्रोक आउट इन Jan 2009. जनवरी में आया सत्यम स्कैम और 26/11, दोनों के कारण मार्केट्स ने लो नहीं ब्रेक किए. Even if you go to US, the Gulf War, or maybe you know Enron का स्कैम आया था, Enron का स्कैम आके मार्केट बॉटम हो गया. ट्विन टावर जो टूटा था, आई मीन यू नो वहाँ पे जो टेररिस्ट अटैक हुआ था ट्विन टावर, उसके पहले मार्केट गिर चुका था. ट्विन टावर पे अटैक हुआ, पीपल वर वरीड कि नहीं बेचो, मार्केट बैठा. तो इट्स लाइक यू नो व्हाट व्हेन द कंसेंसस इज लाइक मुझे बेचना है, मार्केट बढ़ जाता है. सो जो एकदम नेगेटिव न्यूज़ होता है ना, वो बॉटम पे आते हैं, वेर एवरी वन गेट्स कन्विंस्ड कि अब तो मार्केट गया. ट्रम्प का ही देख लो ना, अभी ट्रम्प में सबको लगा कि जो टेरिफ आया ना, अब तो मार्केट इज गॉन. एवरी वन इवन इन वेयर स्टे ना बिल्डिंग में, वहाँ पे मार्केट गया आपका बनाना. एंड इट फेल विद इन नो टाइम, इट मेड क्विक 3-4 days में बॉटम एंड इट रिकवर्ड एंटायरली. अब किसी को पता ही नहीं कि क्या हो गया, कोई ले ही नहीं पाया. That's how it is. I mean 22,800, 23,000 should be max on the downside, and upside quantitatively we say 27,000 positionally.
Okay, so the presentation will come in a moment, but
Sure.
Jay, to the next question, where are you seeing a lot of build up either on the short side or on the long side, जहाँ पे कि आपको next 1-2 महीने में stocks में covering दिख सकती है?
Sure. So see, I would say that you know Nifty is actually composite of almost 15 sectors. Okay, mainly you see 5 sectors contributing almost 75% of the weightage in Nifty. So you see banking, financials has around 38%, 40% kind of a weightage in market.
Bank Nifty.
Bank Nifty, or maybe banking stocks, banking and financials. So I think that is one sector which is looking good, and within that, I think HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, you know, those are the stocks wherein we have seen good short covering happening. And now slowly and gradually we are seeing some good long build up. Axis Bank has seen lot of short build up. वहाँ पे short covering हुआ है, and the stock has gone up. The FI had sold a good amount of stake in Axis Bank, but not in HDFC. Rather, FIs have been buying HDFC Bank. वहाँ पे stake बढ़ रहा है. And derivatives data, quant data also suggests it's likely to go up. So these are the 3 private sector banks which are looking good. And probably, you know, SBI, you can see some further short covering, because SBI among the PSUs had good shorts. पूरे PSU banking stock in fact was underperforming Nifty, wherein the index was down by 30% and Nifty it was underperforming Nifty by 10 to 12%. So BFI as a sector, then 7% is where auto has a weightage in Nifty. Now within that 7%, we have a lot of shorts in Hero MotoCorp and Bajaj Auto. ये दो stock में FIs have sold to the tune of 2 to 2.5%. Okay, so it has already fallen quite a lot. Now there is a good short covering possibility there. So I'm talking just from a short covering possibility. अभी short covering और long में क्या होता है derivative wise के long means the trend stock is trending higher, मतलब ऊपर ही जा रहा है तो आप पकड़ के रखिए उसे. Short covering means is it's like a ball has fallen from a terrace, it will bounce back at the first bounce. तो पहला जब टप्पी गिर के बॉल बाउंस होता है तो पहला वाला जो बाउंस होता है ना वो फास्ट होता है, बाद में तो धीरे 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 वो स्टॉक नीचे ही सेटल हो जाता है, ये बॉल नीचे ही सेटल हो जाता है. सो लॉट ऑफ शॉर्ट्स हैव बिल्ड अप और डेवलप्ड इन टू व्हीलर नेम्स लाइक हीरो एंड बजाज, राइट. So from 1-2 months perspective or 3 months perspective, from a bounce back perspective only, these are the two stocks from the auto names which can bounce back. I have seen a lot of shorts happening in FMCG. Now FMCG also has around good 8-10% kind of weightage in Nifty. Okay, so there is a good chance of short covering happening there in HUL, ITC, okay, and Nestle. अदरवाइज मैरिको और ये सब में शॉर्ट नहीं है. मैरिको है, कोलपाल में शॉर्ट है, तो कोलगेट पामोलिव यू कैन सी गुड शॉर्ट कवरिंग इन एफएमसीजी. यू डोंट हैव मच ऑफ शॉर्ट्स इन आई वुड से मैरिको और फॉर दैट मैटर एनी अदर एफएमसीजी स्टॉक. IT has 11% weightage in Nifty. IT was the last sector to fall. रिसेंटली जब जो गिरा है वो IT ही गिरा है, राइट, फास्ट एकदम. तो उसमें बहुत जल्दी शॉर्ट डेवलप और बिल्डअप हो गए. So from the short term point of view, I think IT can bounce back, and within which we have good short build up in Tech Mahindra, Infosys. Okay, and so HCL Tech में there is no short, but these are the two stocks wherein we have good short build up. So the TCS में इतने shorts नहीं है as compared to Infosys or Tech Mahindra, but yes, TCS also makes a case for a bounce back from Nifty perspective. So Nifty में तो Tech Mahindra, TCS, Infi है.
TCS चला भी है थोड़ा.
Reliance. And last sector I would say which has the highest weightage is oil and gas. 10% weightage in Nifty. 10% में से 9% is Reliance only, right? So Reliance has also fallen quite a lot. Had seen peak open interest, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा lifetime high short build-up देखने मिला था. Stock has come already to 1300 levels. Okay, from 1150 or so levels. So bounce back तो आया है. But that has already bounced quite a lot, तो थोड़ा बहुत और further bounce कर जाए. So what could take Nifty if Nifty has to create a new lifetime high? So Nifty को नया lifetime high पे कौन लेके जाएगा? So mainly जो trending stocks है ना, like पंकज mentioned about M&M from auto, वो ऊपर लेके जाएगा. Power stocks वो ऊपर लेके आएंगे, उन लोगों का weightage है. Cement stocks का weightage है, as पंकज mentioned. Ultratech is a good stock. From the derivative point of view, Ramco Cement is a good stock from the derivative point of view. तो ये सारे जो sectors है, they will take it up. एंड बाकी सेक्टर्स जहाँ पे शॉर्ट बिल्डअप है लाइक IT और प्रोबली सम ऑफ FMCG, सम ऑफ टू व्हीलर नेम्स, ऑटो, रिलायंस, ये बाउंस बैक करेंगे. सो थोड़ा बाउंस बैक और थोड़ा ट्रेंडिंग, दैट्स हाउ द मिक्स इज गोइंग टू बी. सो नॉट ऑल द सेक्टर्स विल परफॉर्म एट द सेम टाइम. दैट हैपन्स वेरी रेयर व्हेन वी सॉ ड्यूरिंग कोविड और प्रोबली अभी जो रिसेंट बाउंस आया था, तो सब चल रहा है. हाथी लो, घोड़ा लो, कुछ भी लो, प्यादा लो, कुछ भी लो फ्रॉम द चेस्ट, राइट. एवरीथिंग रन्स अप. एंड व्हेन एवरीथिंग इज रनिंग अप ना, यू शुड बी नोइंग कि ये कहीं ना कहीं खत्म होगा ना, तो ऐसा फास्ट फॉल आएगा. बिकॉज इट्स लाइक वॉट एवर यू प्लेस योर बेट ऑन एंड इज गोइंग अप, राइट. सो दैट्स द टाइम दैट्स एक्चुअली स्लोली एंड ग्रेजुअली यू शिफ्ट टुवर्ड्स क्वालिटी नेम्स. अब ऐसा नहीं होगा कि वेर एवर यू पुट योर फिंगर इज अनफ, बिकॉज इट्स गोइंग टू बी वेरी सिलेक्टिव इज व्हाट आई बिलीव.
So Jay, on options trading for people, let me just ask you one question. In fact, two part of the questions. One is that a lot of people buy options, right? और वो options buy करते हैं और दो तरह की ट्रेडिंग होती है. एक तो एक्सपायरी के दिन होती है, और एक्सपायरी के दिन भी अगर आप देखें तो काफ़ी लोग ऑप्शंस को बाई कर लेते हैं, दूर के ऑप्शंस, आउट ऑफ द मनी ऑप्शंस बाई करते हैं. एंड सो मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि आप तो एनालिस्ट हैं, आप बताते हैं लोगों को कि भाई क्या करना चाहिए, कहाँ से आप स्टॉक बताते हैं. तो व्हेन पीपल आर ट्रेडिंग देमसेल्व्स, तो वो क्या चीज़ें आप देखते हो जब आप कोई ऑप्शंस पे कॉल दे रहे हो, आपको लग रहा है कि मार्केट अभी तेजी में है, तो व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दैट यू सी? एंड स्पेसिफिकली आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन कि आप एक्सपायरी के दिन एट द मनी लेना चाहिए, इन द मनी लेना चाहिए कि OTM लेना चाहिए, is a question that I want to ask.
This is a very nice question by Saurabh. I mean, most of the people in options, those whosoever is trading in options and derivatives, mainly get attracted in options due to lower pricing of the premium. On a day of expiry, I mean, generally you have this weekly expiry every Thursday on Nifty, right? So हर Thursday को expiry है, and people earlier though we used to have expiry all the days, but now that's not happening. Now तो SEBI has just given permission for 2 expiries. So Tuesday you have Sensex and Thursday you have Nifty, and then you have on the last day of the month, that is Thursday, right? So what happens is on the day of expiry, you should be doing or trading with the in the money options. You know, so I will. Yeah. So basically, first I'll answer to Saurav's first question, that what all do you look at while trading in options. So see, there is a lot of efforts and lot of reading that is required if you are doing it yourself. Okay. Else you can follow our recommendations on our app and website which comes. If you are not able to do it by yourself, but if you are doing it by yourself, you think you can, then these are the few things which I would say I would recommend to basically follow. I mean, one is options chain. So we at options chain, when you look at the market, it gives you a lot of insight. Now suppose market is right now, for example, at 24,000 approximately I'm taking. Okay. Now Thursday is the expiry. Okay. And Monday market opens. Suppose market opens at 23,900, or say for example market opens at 24,100. If I see that for this week there is good amount of call writing at 24,500. I mean 1 crore shares of open interest at 24,500. And there is 23,500 by 1 crore shares of open interest in put side. So looking at this OI, what do you understand? This will act as a resistance or as a support. मतलब जब तक 24,500 नहीं निकलेगा, there are call writers there, right? Till then, market is like difficult to take off about 24,500, because see, who makes more money in market? Options में the call writers. Okay. So call writers ज़्यादा पैसा बनाता है as compared to buyers. Okay, buyers have to quickly enter and exit in the market, but sellers, they sell and they try to make the market zero. Right? Sorry. So मैं बताता हूँ. So open interest पे basically क्या होता है कि 24,500 पे समझो there is 1 crore shares का open interest 24,500 पे. एंड 23,500 के पुट ऑप्शन पे समझो 1 करोड़ का ओपन इंटरेस्ट एग्जाम्पल. इसके बीच में इतना 1 करोड़ का फिगर किधर है ही नहीं. मान लो 20 लाख है, 30 लाख है, विच एवर अदर स्ट्राइक. सो दे आर नॉट मच इंपॉर्टेंट. जहाँ पे सबसे हाईएस्ट है ना, वो इंपॉर्टेंट है. मीन्स ये आपका रेजिस्टेंस और सपोर्ट बन गया. जब तक ये नहीं निकलेगा वहां पे आके अटक जाएगा. नहीं, उसमें मैं आता हूँ. जो सौरव ने क्वेश्चन पूछा ना, तो यू अंडरस्टूड दिस, हाउ टू अंडरस्टैंड एज अ मार्केट का सपोर्ट क्या है, रेजिस्टेंस क्या है. वैसे ही आप मंथली एक्सपायरी का भी देख लो. तो वीकली का हुआ, मंथली एक्सपायरी का भी देखो. सो मंथली एक्सपायरी के भी रेंज आपको समझ में आ जाएगी कि इफ एट 25,000 स्ट्राइक यू हैव हाईएस्ट ओपन इंटरेस्ट एंड 23,000 स्ट्राइक यू हैव हाईएस्ट ओपन इंटरेस्ट इन द पुट साइड, मींस 23 और 25 के बीच में मार्केट रहेगा फॉर दिस मंथ. सो यू गॉट दिस मंथली रेंज, यू हैव गॉट दिस वीकली रेंज एज वेल. जब ये रेंज हमें समझ में आ जाती है ना, तो हमें मार्केट का डायरेक्शन समझ में आ जाता है. सो सपोज इफ मार्केट इज एट 24,400 बाय वेडनेसडे, और वेडनेसडे को 24,500 पे सबसे ज़्यादा ओपन इंटरेस्ट है, तो मैं क्या बाय करके जाऊंगा? नहीं, क्योंकि 100 पॉइंट तो ऊपर है. एंड फ्लिप साइड, इफ 23,600 आ जाता है और 25,500 पे सबसे ज़्यादा पुट ओपन इंटरेस्ट है, तो मुझे क्या उधर पुट लेना चाहिए डर के? नहीं, मुझे कॉल लेना चाहिए. सो दीज आर द फ्यू डेटा विच यू लुक एट इन ऑप्शंस चेन. यू लुक एट द पीसीआर, पुट कॉल रेशियो. तो दिस ऑप्शंस में जितने पुट लिखे और कॉल लिखे ना, उसका एक रेशियो बनता है. सो इफ देयर आर 1 करोड़ शेयर्स इन कॉल and if say for example there are 80 lakh shares in put, okay, so 80 divided by 1, okay, is less than 1. Less than 1 means negative, more than 1 means bullish. Okay, so if PCR is more than 1, the market is bullish. If PCR is less than 1, the market is bearish. At 1 it is neutral. So इससे भी market समझ में आता है कि क्या है. And then you look at the FI data, FI net long short data. This is phenomenal data. Whenever FI net long percentage comes to 15% in market generally bottoms. And whenever FI net long percentage generally comes to 70-75 range, market generally tops. मतलब वहाँ पे top बन जाता है. अभी ये टाइम जो top बना था 26,300. You know what was FI net long position? Was around 80%. Market top. We could sense the market top from that data also. And recently when market bottom at 21,750, what was the FI net long percentage? 13 to 15 range, 13 to 15%. There it was very clear that at 13-15 range I should not be selling it aggressively. So these are the few data which we look at. And final answer to what one should be planning the expiry. Then at the beginning of the week or month, okay, option writers are very aggressive because see, start of the week or month you have a lot of higher premiums. So sellers want to sell. Okay, so if you buy, and what is the highest premium? It is in ATM and ITM. So you would not buy ITM, ATM at the start. You will rather buy OTM at the start. तो आपके स्टॉप लॉस सर नहीं जाएंगे. आपने क्या किया? आपने महंगे वाले खरीद लिए स्टार्ट में, ATM वाले. So non-movement in the index or a quick downside movement will take away your stop loss. But had you bought OTM, the delta is less. मतलब Nifty falls by 100 points, the OTM put option or call option will only fall by 20-30 points. So आपका stop loss नहीं होगा. At the start of the week you buy OTM. As you move towards the expiry, तो नहीं, ये तो बहुत ही सिंपल है सर. एट द मनी मतलब क्या? 24,000 की निफ्टी है ना, तो 24,000 का कॉल एंड पुट इज एट द मनी. एनीथिंग अबाउट 24,000 ऑन द कॉल साइड इज कॉल्ड आउट ऑफ द मनी. एनीथिंग बिलो 24,000 इज इन द मनी, राइट? एंड कन्वर्सली फॉर पुट. ओके, so at the start of the expiry, weekly or monthly, you start OTM. As you move towards the expiry, you buy ATM. And on the day of expiry, which Saurabh asked, is ITM. Public उल्टा करता है. People buy OTM on the day of expiry कि 5 rupees 10 rupees में मुझे ऑप्शन मिल रहा है, मैं लेता हूँ and I will hit a jackpot. और jackpot नहीं होता है, वो आप फोड़ोगे तो अंदर से कुछ निकलता ही नहीं है, because you know most of the options expire worthless on the day of expiry. Worthless on the day of expiry. So you should be buying in the money call option or a put option, okay? Because in the money has a higher delta. मतलब निफ्टी समझो 50 रुपया भी चल गया ना, तो ये ऑप्शन आपका 30-35 रुपये चली जाएगा. So ITM should be bought on expiry day. Yes, Saurabh.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risk. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.